Welcome back to the show. Today we're going to talk about something that you guys wouldn't even imagine is possible. You're going to meet with Tyler Clark, and Tyler has really created a way of taking what could be some of the most miserable places to live. Look, imagine being a refugee. Some of these refugees are stuck in refugee camps, some of them as many as 16 years or more, and it's a long-term change in life, and he has found a way to help them create income. Now, to me, this is everything the podcast we talk about is bringing great ideas in places where there wasn't a great idea. And for that, I'm excited about talking with Tyler. Tyler, welcome to the show. Let's get into how you created this.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I've been involved in humanitarian work for the last 6 years, and we built like 22 libraries throughout Africa. And so really involved with this, but it was always the big question, like, how do you know you're making an impact on these kids' lives, right? Now, we would do libraries, and I think it's hard to argue that libraries are good for kids, right? But at the same time, like, how do you really know you're helping them come out of poverty? And anyway, we eventually built a library in a refugee camp, and the crazy thing was, Anthony, is talking with some of the guys there. It's like, hey, so what's your story? And this one guy was like, yeah, I have a master's degree. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, and he's like, yeah, I got my master's degree from the UK. I was the director of economics, and I'm just like, what the freak are you doing here? Like, what? And he's like, no, I've been here for 10 years. And as soon as there was
Wow.
a coup in the Congo, I had to flee with my family, and I have nothing to do. And he was a janitor for a local nonprofit there. I mean, this this UK master educated guy was doing basically nothing, and he just wanted to work. So I contacted some tech companies, one in particular called Connect out here in Utah, and I was like, hey, can we train these guys how to do some remote jobs? Let's see how that works. And so we piloted it out. That was amazingly successful. We launched this thing back in April, and it's been doubling ever since.
Well, when you say you launched this thing, it's called Zawadi, right? It's
Right.
it's the website and the company is called Zawadi, and Zawadi essentially does it takes migrant or immigrants that are in refugee camps, right? You focus.
They're actually in the camps. Yep.
All right, so in camp, so you're talking about facilities, and tell me about these facilities. Give me like a little bit about what's the real reality. I mean, you were in these facilities. What's the reality of the facility?
I actually just got back last week. The camps are pretty intense. Um, it's better termed as like mini cities. So you got like 6,000 people in a 2 mile by 2 mile square. So I mean, house to house to house, and everyone's living in these little homes. Like your bathroom is the size of some of their homes, and you got 6 or 8 people living in some of these homes that are just tiny. And the poverty is intense. The average person in these camps lives off of the equivalent of $7 a month. Like it's nuts. And most people, they just get used to living off of one meal a day. Like I still don't know how they survive, but they're all skin and bones. Like it's intense. And the unemployment rate, because they're in a camp, is 91%. Most people are there, as you mentioned, are there for 16 years. Our hub manager, he's from Rwanda. He fled Rwanda when he was 5 during the Rwanda genocide. If you've ever seen Hotel Rwanda,
Sure.
like he's still there. Like the camps are intense is the best way to mention it.
So you've got these people who are an untapped resource, right? These are,
Hmm.
I mean, just because they're in a refugee camp, it doesn't undermine the value of their human, their real,
Yeah.
I mean, who they are. And now you spend some time with them, and you really get in touch with that. Now you come back and you start to put together an organization. Now, look, like growing everything, it's an idea. Hey, I got this
Right.
idea. I get this untapped resource of people that are there, and to grow the idea, right? There's the growing it. There's this leap that has to, we have to cross over
Yep.
some broken glass and jump over the abyss, and we got to chew some of that glass and we go through it. So you're going to go grow this business. Let's talk a little bit about that. So what do you go through? How long have you been doing it? Uh, how many people are involved in it? Talk to me a little bit about how this resource is growing and kind of what you're doing to grow that.
Yeah. So I reached out to a good friend. He's actually from Nigeria and he works at Microsoft, and he partnered with me with this, and we launched it back in April. We also had some initial investors that allowed us to actually build the facility down there. with the computers and with Starlink. Honestly, if
Oh,
Starlink
neat.
wasn't a thing, this wouldn't be a thing.
Nice. Go
Because
Elon Musk.
yeah, thank you, Elon Musk. Um, and so we started from there, and we started like our first thing was data entry, just something real simple, right?
Yep.
Then we expand to web design. Now we're doing graphic design. Now we're doing customer service, and we go from service to service. And just like anything else, like we figure out how do we do our marketing, how do we reach out, what's our message, right? And as we mentioned it, like the impact's huge. Like to date, we've brought over 200 people out of poverty, right? And
Wow.
that's not hyperbole. Like if
Right.
you look at the World Bank's definition of how much they're making now compared to where they were before, there's 200 people out of poverty. And on
Wow.
average, we paid 13 times the base pay, like the minimum wage in this camp, right? So they are
Wow.
making good money. They're saving up. They're able to start their own businesses. They're able to put their brothers and sisters to school or their kids. Like it's really life changing, and it doesn't take that much. I mean, we're talking about like 150, $200 a month for some of these refugees, but it means the world considering everyone else is making $7,
Well,
right?
just what I know about humans are you're creating hope, right?
Yep.
And when I give hope to humans, when I work on creating great ideas, for a man or woman who's stuck in a place where there is no hope,
Yep.
right? You that desperation, that feeling of just vision and future isn't a possible. There are no possibilities. Now you come in a place that, look, you're going to get, I'm certain you've gotten all kinds of ups and downs and growing the business and things that have
Hmm.
worked and things that haven't worked. And, we'll talk a little bit about some of that, but now all of a sudden you're giving a human hope, right? That they could see a future that's brighter than where they are now. So
Hmm.
you start working out. Let's talk a little bit about your first ventures. What are some of the ups? What are some of the downs? I certainly know that growing companies, in this environment has some difficulties.
Yeah. Let me go on hope for a bit, and then I'll talk about the ups and downs. But so one story I want to share is Esther, who's been with us since the beginning. We were walking with her as we were down there, and she was telling about her story, and she was telling us how, like before, her mom needed medicine. I believe it was diabetes medication, but couldn't get it because they didn't have any money. And now that she's working, she's able to provide that medicine, and she's able to feed her family, right? Like those two things. And she started tearing up, and we started tearing up. But the whole thing is like hope. But the cool thing is, it's not like, hey, thank you for this charity. Thank you for helping me. It's
Right.
like, yeah, and what she talks about, what got her teary eyed, wasn't that she was able to buy the medicine, but that every day her mom says she's proud of her. And
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
proud of what you do. And
Yeah.
that it's not, it's hope, it's self respect, it's the ability to say, look what I did for my family, because they earn it, they do the work.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's start with that. But
No, no, but
um,
I think that's
yeah,
a big part, right? Look, I I've been part of a lot of charity work and giving. Look, I appreciate that, but you're right. Without having them actually be an active involvement in it, right? Where they take on and they're part of creating that, right? They're the pride that this is me doing this, right?
right.
I'm not taking a handout from anybody, right? And I've done that in other parts where we put bathrooms in and water pumps in, and
Right.
when I can go into a school or when we work with a group that says, look, this is my school, right?
Right.
We're gonna, I've worked with a bunch of schools in Africa where we work on upgrading the school and putting some facilities in and courts. When they treat it in their pride, it's my school. It's surprising how much things kick in, right?
Hmm.
How things don't get stolen when the community knows that it's not some NGO coming in and putting this in, right? It becomes that school, their kids, their community, right? There's a pride and something that happens that it's really fulfilling, right? My
Yeah.
judgment is it gets some fulfillment for them. And but by the way, I think it works, right? I think sometimes going
Yeah.
by and dropping off these little gifts to go, well, here's a gift. I think I've tried that before, and it sounds good, but it really doesn't last. It's kind of a, well, here, let me give you a chance to start something, but it doesn't really kick in. It leaves them empty and meaningless later on.
I love that you see that, Anthony, because that is like, unless they see it as theirs, it's just not going to work. And charity can actually do more harm than good if they don't see it as theirs and they don't start gaining that self-respect, because charity can be a cancer. And that's what I keep hearing from these guys is like, I'm sick of receiving charity. I want to work. I want to provide value. I want to do stuff, right? And that's the biggest change with it. But to go back to your original questions, like ups and downs, like the hardest thing that we've experienced when we first started with this, we're reaching out to companies. Like they love the story, they love the impact, but it's always like, but refugees, like, can they really handle my website? Like, because there's this perception on immigrants and refugees of like, oh, they're uneducated or they can't really do this. And there's a general perception with Africans. Every time you think of Africa, you think of those, World Bank, videos like, oh, look at the poor children. What people don't realize is like there are extremely educated, smart, dynamic individuals in these camps and throughout all of Africa, right? And like some of these individuals like that run our center, they could do my job better than I can do it.
Right.
And and not only that, but their experience as refugees, like they will find a solution to any problem because that's what they've had to do. I mean, imagine you're driven out of your house, you have nothing. You have to get from point A to point B with nothing, and they will find a way. And that's what they've gone through. And so they will do the same with your business. They will do the same with any problem. They will find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that there's so much in that conversation you just brought up, and it's something that plagues our society. From the way people think about other humans as less than, and not see them.
Yeah.
If those were our children, would we leave them behind? Would we not give them a shot? Would we not find jobs for them to do? And now you're doing that, right? And by the way, I think it's a risk, and it's taking some work, but those companies are getting they're getting a benefit also, right? They're getting
Hmm.
an employee that's at a discounted rate, so there is
Hmm.
a benefit to them. But they're even more than that. They've got to be able to look at themselves and go, yeah, I'm changing lives, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there's something about that. I don't know about you, but out of all the things I've got in my life, when I can give back to human beings, I, that's
Yeah.
look. We've got so much abundance here in our country and in our lives that if I can find ways where we can give back more, I feel like it really does give back to our whole world, right?
Hmm. No, I love that. And it really is like people are naturally good. Like we want to help. There's nothing more gratifying than the feeling of like, hey, I helped someone today. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so like our pitch and their pitch is like, hey, you know, help these people get out of poverty. And that's usually how we get in the door because there's 1,000 outsourcing companies that do this. But we're the only like, hey, impact outsourcing. We're like, hey, if you hire these individuals, you're bringing them out of poverty. And that's not hyperbole. I can share with you stories, and we share with them the videos and the stories of, hey, look how their lives have changed. And then secondly, it's a third of the cost, so you're saving
So,
money.
so,
Yeah.
so let's talk about who could use your service. I want to make sure that people get this. So, folks, look, you can. Let's talk about. So, is it only organizations that can hire them?
What do you mean by that? Like,
Like if I want a website built, can I come to you guys and go, hey, Tyler, I'd like to have your folks build a website for me?
oh yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, if you're a solo entrepreneur, if you just have your website, they can come in. We can usually finish a website within a week and a half. They're pretty quick,
All right, there you go. Right,
right?
it would talk like a merchant website. I mean, how deep can you get into, and how where you guys at as an organization being able to do what other things can you do?
Well, in terms of website, we can do SEO. We can do, if you need a shopping cart customized built, like that's one thing they're doing right now. Any work on the website's there. If you're a large organization and you have your customer service department, like we're doing that for multiple companies right now. Their English is amazing, slight accent, but it's kind of refreshing getting called by a little bit of an African accent versus an Indian accent because that's what we all hear, right? Nothing against India, but it is a slight change. So we'll do that as well as graphic design. We have a bunch of gaming companies that they come and we help them with their graphic design, their illustration, stuff like that. But yeah, whether you're a solo entrepreneur, a mid-sized company, and you have work that can be outsourced, we can do it.
All right, so if I want to have this done, so look, we have lots of entrepreneurs that listen to the show, right? There's lots of them. So let's say I want to come to you and I want to hire and get Zawadi, to do my website or to do my email marketing or do my domain creation or my web building or what cloud, work on my cloud server. How do I start with you? Who do I call? What do I start? What's the phone number? What's the email address?
Yeah, so you go to our website, zawadi.com, and then just click on contact us and send us a connection request. Then what we'll do is we'll set up a discovery call. We want to make sure that it's going to work, right? Um, our full philosophy was this is we'll start with one service, we'll perfect it, then we go to the next service. We perfect that.
Fair enough.
So for example, like computer programming, we have talent in the camp that can do that, but we haven't gotten to that yet, right? But if it's a good fit, if there's synergy, we'll start with the next stage where we'll start onboarding. We'll introduce you to your team leader. And that's another thing. When you start working with us, it's a team. You work with an entire team. You just don't work with one individual, right? So that way they're all working together. We can get it done, and we can get it done quick. The last step is we give you a quote. We always quote up front, so that way you know what you're getting into. Lastly, there are no contracts. It's just project to project or it's month to month. And actually, according to refugee employment laws, we can't do any contracts, which is nice for the consumer.
Well, I mean, my imagine is that you have to break through all kinds of, like, do these folks have a banking account? How do they get paid? How does all this work for them? I mean, there's got to be a lot of things that you've had to break through to figure out how to make them employees or are they independent contractors? I mean, there's got to be a lot of that you had to solve.
Oh, there is, and it's the crazy thing, Anthony. Like for anyone that's been out to these camps, it's like the Wild West. Right? You got the UNHCR, which runs the camp. Then you have the local government, and there's always these politics at play because the local governments, like the same thing here, how we have this big battle with immigrants coming in. They have the exact same thing, and it's almost like this universal thing that as soon as you're an immigrant or refugee, people think that you're not wanted. Like there must be a reason why you're leaving your country or they kicked you out of your country. You must not be good, right? Which couldn't be
Mm,
farther from the truth. And that's the biggest problem with these camps and the politics and figuring this stuff is the xenophobia, right? Even
mm,
in Africa and even Malawi, which is one of the nicest, most warm-hearted country, like there's still a lot of xenophobia from all these people coming from the Congo and worried that they're going to take their jobs and all these different things. Where if they would just let them in, you have this massive pool of really educated people that start businesses and do all this good in their local company if you just let them in instead of like regulating them to this camp that they can't even leave.
mm, mm. It does amaze me how when we're scared, possibilities for when we look at other human beings, like we're going through that here in our country now,
Yeah,
right? That we've got this massive amount of immigrants that are coming in, and how afraid we've become, and what we've done to shut down what's possible, right? What made
yeah,
this country what it is amazing immigrants, and
yeah,
now all of a sudden we've got these immigrants who are coming in, and just how politics are making us angry at them. You've got this chance now. I get it. Look, I get that having folks come in here illegally, and we've got to create a system for them to come in, right? Because America does have a great opportunity. Creating these border transfers, where people can move around. It's just my judgment is that their fear kicks in,
yeah,
and making possibilities for them gets shrunk down. Like people can't see the billions of things you could do to have a successful plan for great immigration, right? For people to come into a country, become an active member of the society, really be a contributing member of society. How to make that process happen quickly, smoothly, and easily, right? At the same time, make it safe, right? So we
hmm,
understand who those folks are, how they're coming in, right? Making sure that they're not a plague on our society. I think that's what we're all afraid of, right? All of a sudden we have that bad immigrant that comes in and does something unsafe, right? I think that's ultimately where the politics scares us. Like, oh my God, this guy's going to come in, or that guy's going to come in, and they're gangsters, and they're taking over a
yeah,
city, or whatever. And by the way, that's happened, right? So there's some truth and in the conversation. So it's a big one. I don't know. Look, my one is for us to be generous and create a way of this working. And I also know that we humans have messed a bunch of things up in doing this. So
yeah.
it's amazing what you're doing. So you're really going to these countries. By the way, how did you get into this? How did you even? What kind of work were you doing over there? How did you find? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I was so initially, like I talked about with the libraries, I had served an LDS Mormon mission for 2 years in Mexico,
Oh, nice.
and I had a really close friend reach out to me, and I was back. I had two kids at the time. I was married. This was a couple of years after I got back because you usually do it as young adults, right? And I was in the middle of my MBA program, and she reached out. Was like, "Hey, can you help us build a library? They don't have anything." And my mom's a teacher, and I love books. I always have two books next to my nightstand. I'm always reading two or three. Like, and it's like, how do they not have books like that? Just I couldn't resonate that. And so we reached out to our local community. We helped fundraise for that. We built the library, and then we just kept building and building and building. So not that's how it kind of got into it. Didn't mean to start an organization, but it just one thing led to another. And it's hard
That's
once you see these needs, like to walk away from it. Once you've
yeah.
experienced it, you got to keep going.
That's beautiful. I can feel that, right? And congratulations to you and the LDS community that's out there doing what they're doing. And I hear so many great stories from the pilgrimage, just from the work that folks are doing in that community.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
it really is a beautiful part of your community and the work that you guys do. So I know LDS sometimes gets a rap, but I hear more amazing things out of it than ever before. Just really, really are moving mountains. I want to make sure we're supporting Tyler Clark. I want to make sure our group is supporting you and getting folks out there. What is the contact information for the company, and how do we get folks to you?
Yeah, go check our website, zawadi.com. Check it out.
Spell that for
Um,
everybody, and we'll put the links down
it's
below. By the way, we'll put all the links
yeah,
down below.
it's ZAWADIE.com.
All right. So
Um,
it's a little that doesn't roll off the tongue that easy. So it's taken me a couple times to read it, but make sure you look down below. I'm going to put the links down there below. Look, I challenge you, every one of our audience, find something we can have Zawadi do for us. And Tyler Clark, as our community supports you, I would love to hear some great success stories about where we're at and how that's growing. And I'd love to have you on this podcast continuously as you're growing this organization and bringing hope to humans in some of the darkest places in the world. Brother, I'm grateful to watch and listen to what you're up to.
Thanks, Anthony. I really appreciate it. And any project brings people out of poverty, and I would love to share those stories of what this podcast has done and how that's changed their lives. And those are the most beautiful stories. They really are.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, we'll continue to follow up on you, and gratitude all along the way. Thanks for being on today.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.
Hey, audience, if you guys could take a second. Last week we had over 5,000 downloads. It was amazing, right? Like, you guys are really, it's amazing. Our entire podcast crew was celebrating last week. We just had such an amazing amount of downloads, and how many people were getting involved. I love your comments. If you have any comments, put them down below. We love the comments you guys have. It really does show us the activity, and anything you want to hear, any podcast you want us to have. But also notice that there's a bunch of you that weren't subscribed. If you could take a second and like and subscribe, it means the world to Alyssa and Joe and Connor and all the folks in the background that tirelessly work on finding us amazing guests and great ideas to bring the podcast. So if you could, please like and subscribe now. And Tyler and I will make sure that we'll answer any questions that you have. And thanks for listening as always.